Rockets and Knicks were in Game 5 when O.J. started that fateful drive. His four-way hazard lights were blinking, and no one knew what the Jews was thinking.
I've been to Reno, Chicago, Fargo, Minnesota, Buffalo, Toronto, Winslow, Sarasota, Wichita, Tulsa, Ottawa, Oklahoma, Tampa, Panama, Mattawa, La Paloma, Bangor, Baltimore, Salvador, Amarillo, Tocopilla, Barranquilla, and Padilla. I'm a killer. I've been everywhere, man. I've been everywhere, man. Crossed the desert bare, man. I breathe the mountain air, man. I've traveled, I've had my share, man. I've been everywhere.
This is Oversight Live, your advocate for good governance. We're putting the site back in. Oversight. Here's the watcher on the wall, your host, Ben Carpenter.
Hey, good evening, everyone. This Monday, 2nd of March. Thanks for joining us tonight. I am Ben Carpenter. This is Oversight Live. And you might ask, what is Oversight Live? Well, we're relatively new. Been broadcasting here for a few weeks. Our state capital in Juneau, Alaska is only accessible by plane or by ferry. There is no road. And that makes it prohibitively expensive in both time and money for most Alaskans to go visit their government on a regular basis. Providing oversight over our elected representatives and our government is a greater challenge for Alaskans than it is most Americans. Oversight Live is your road to Juneau until a real one can be built. A lack of a road is a major inconvenience, but with today's technology, it's no longer a valid excuse for not knowing what's going on. So we will bring you convenient and relevant content that you can be informed and educated with. And it's the actual truth because I'm going to show it to you. You can go and look it up yourself. And you don't have to filter it out through some liberal media bias. You will have my bias, and I am unabashedly a limited government, fiscal, and social conservative. You have the opportunity to engage with me, your host, and with other Alaskans during this broadcast. If you have questions or comments, just chat them in your social media app and YouTube, and I'll see them. And to the extent that is possible during the broadcast, if I can answer your questions or address them, I will. If you're listening to this broadcast recording and you have questions, then drop me a line, drop me an email at producer@oversightlive.com, and I will do my best to get back to you with an answer. Be aware that if you've got a good question, odds are someone else has got the same question. So I may use it on air and answer it, address it, use it as a teaching moment. Ultimately, what we want to be able to do is increase the knowledge that people have of their government so that you can influence your community. I spent 6 years in the legislature, in the state legislature in Alaska, and I don't want my time to go to waste. I really do think that was a valuable experience, and I would like to impart what I learned to you. So that's what I'm going to attempt to do. Don't hesitate to ask questions. No, there are no dumb questions. I guess maybe the only one that's dumb is the one that's not asked, because you just don't know. So, well, that's it. We're going to try to have fun. I know some of this stuff can be dry at times, but we're going to try to have fun. So let's get started. All right, tonight, I think we're going to have a discussion about we're going to answer a question. Question I hear very often. What do we cut in the budget? Okay, I told you I'm a fiscal conservative, which means I tend to look at spending decisions as we need to spend only those things that are necessary. And I think that it is a better, healthier place for our state to be, that those of us who are asking government to do something ought to be willing to pay for that which we are asking our government to do in some form or fashion. Okay. I think that's what helps keep the lid down on stupid things being asked of the government. Because if you have to pay for stupid, well, then you got to pay for it. But if you can force someone else to pay for stupid, then you get a whole lot of stupid. So we got budget problems in the state of Alaska. I'm sure every other state from time to time has got budget problems. The question always is, do we raise taxes or do we cut spending? Like that's what legislatures do. They just figure that piece out, right? Well, with respect to the state of Alaska's budget, what I hear a lot is we don't have any room to cut. We've already tried cutting. Where are you going to cut? We can't cut. So I thought I'd take a stab at that today and help reframe the conversation just a little bit and help people understand what it would take to actually reduce the budget. I know that there's a line item, right? The governor can just redline the budget when he gets it and veto funding. Okay, and then it just isn't appropriated. Just budget cut. But long term, is that healthy? Does the following budget or the supplemental? We just passed a supplemental out of the House this year. It's in the Senate. About $500 million of state spending and a total supplemental budget of over $1 billion. Okay. So this is a conversation that didn't happen when we passed the first budget. And so now we're going to have a conversation about the second budget. Going to add roughly $500 million of state spending and a little more than $700 million in federal receipts. So federal money flowing in. Okay. So we're headed the opposite direction. We're not looking at budget and saying, hey, we need to live within our means. We're looking at, hey, we've got money. We got permanent fund earnings. This year we got $200 million more in permanent fund earnings than we had last year. So what is the government going to do? They're going to spend it. So we need to ask the question and answer the question, where do you cut spending? Okay. That's a very difficult question to answer because every dollar that gets spent has a constituency somewhere. And there are many people who say government needs to be cut, the budget needs to be reduced, but not in my backyard. My pet project, what I think is important, don't cut that, but cut something else somewhere else that doesn't affect me, right? And so that becomes the issue. Every constituency down in Juneau is lobbying, don't cut us, we're too important. So I want to show you something. I'll show you a couple things. Unfortunately, I don't have any quick answers other than you could just appropriate less money. You could. And then the bureaucracy, you would have to trust the bureaucracy to figure something out. And I think the bureaucracy is not trustworthy right now. I'm going to show you why. Okay. So let's look at something here. I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to show you where you can go to look up some information. All right. So what you are looking at is the Alaska Division of Legislative Audit. This is a function of the legislature. The Legislative Budget and Audit Committee, of which I chaired a couple of years ago, oversees the state auditor and the state auditor's staff and all of the audits that go on of the government. And so we have tasked the auditor to do a statewide audit consistently every year. Okay. So what you're looking at here on this webpage, and if you can't see it up in the top here, it is leg audit, legaudit.akleg.gov. And that'll take you to the homepage. And then if you just click on reports and click on single audits, you'll get to the state single audit that happens every year. Okay. So for fiscal year, for calendar year 2025, the single audit for the state fiscal year 24 is the most recent audit. Okay. But you can see on this webpage that there are a whole lot of audits that are out here that you could be read. So I've already downloaded the statewide audit. So I'm going to jump over and I'm going to show you some things on this audit. I think this is it. Let's see here. All right. So partway down after the introduction and table of contents and all that, you get to the independent auditor's report. And Miss Chris Curtis is the legislative auditor, state auditor. And this is her report. So auditors issue opinions. They audit, they go in and question financial or performance, but in this case it's financial matters, and then they report, and they follow standards that exist for auditors. And so they issue qualified reports or unqualified reports, and that may not mean anything to you right now. So let me show you what we talk about when we're talking about reports and qualified and unqualified. So I just did a quick search online. What does a qualified audit opinion mean in layman's terms, right? So a qualified audit is an opinion that indicates that a company or a government's financial statements are generally reliable, except for specific identified issues that the auditor is going to highlight. Okay. The alternative to a qualified audit is going to be an unqualified audit. So unqualified audit opinion is issued when an auditor concludes that overall the financial statements are fairly represented. I'm sorry, I'm reading the qualified audit. That they're fairly represented in accordance with the applicable financial reporting framework. The causes or why you would get a qualified opinion is because there are some issues that arise. Material misstatements in specific areas or their scope limitations. Okay. So they didn't have access to information. And so they issue a qualified report. Okay. So now let's real quick jump back over to the audits report. I want to show you something. Okay. So I'm going to scroll down here, and I've already done a search here for Medicaid. So matters giving rise to qualified opinions on governmental fund, general fund, and governmental activities. All right. So the state of Alaska's Medicaid Management Information System, that's the acronym MMIS, is used to process the bulk of all Medicaid payments. Okay. So mostly this is federal dollars coming into the state through Medicaid, but it's state money as well. Department of Health contracts with service organizations, claims processing and system administration of MMIS, of the information system. Okay. Department of Health did not obtain a system and organization controls type 2 report covering controls over financial reporting and Medicaid payments processed by these service organizations that are contracted out. And this is for fiscal year 24. Without this systems and organizational controls report for these service organizations, the auditor is unable to obtain adequate evidence of internal controls over financial reporting related to Medicaid payments. Okay. So what it's basically saying is that the managers didn't get this legally required report that the auditors could then look at to gauge whether Medicaid payments are being managed correctly. Okay, so now it's a qualified report because they didn't have the information to look at. All right. Again, we're answering the question tonight of how you reduce spending. Okay. So I want to show you something else here. So if we jump to in the audit report, you're going to have findings. Okay. And these findings are labeled with numbers so that you can track them. So this finding that we're looking at here is with regard to the systems and organizational controls report. And I just wanted to pause here and show you what the effect is, okay? So the absence of the report created a lack of appropriate evidence to support management's assertion, the government's assertion, of completeness, accuracy, and valuation of claims processed through MMIS, okay? And what this means is there's $2.4 billion in general fund expenditures, which resulted in approximately $1.8 billion in federal grants and aid revenue. Okay, so we're talking $2.4 billion in general funds and $1.8 in federal receipts that we cannot audit. Okay, so the recommendation from the auditor is that they need to go get this report, so the auditor can actually audit the spending of this money. All right. So right in the, this doesn't mean that there is fraud happening. It doesn't mean that, but it means it could. We just don't know because we're not looking. It also means that there's some sort of management problem with why we don't have this report that's needed. This by law is supposed to have. Okay. So I want to show you some other things here. So what else did the auditor find? All right, so here's finding number 2024-066. Okay, and I'm only going to hit a couple of these because there's a whole bunch of them. In this report, you can just following along here. This is prior year finding, right? 2023, the finding from 2020, the audit in 2023 the audit of fiscal year 2023-050, so that you could go to that audit report and read up on this particular audit that they found in 2023, or the finding that they found in 2023. Okay, so there's a material weakness, material non-compliance. That's the impact that the finding is having, or that the auditor found on the government's spending of money. These are the federal awards that are at question here or impacted. And then it goes into to describe the conditions. So this is going to tell you kind of what they found and recommendations. So 60 Medicaid and 60 CHIP recipients were randomly selected for eligibility testing. So they're testing eligibility. Are we appropriating money, the legislature, are we appropriating money for Medicaid, and is it being spent on people who are eligible for receiving the money? Okay. This is what a legislature and a legislator should be curious about. So here's the following errors. 24 of 60 cases had timing issues. Some cases had multiple deficiencies. 15 of the 60 cases, 2 of which were behavioral health cases, had not gone through renewal assessment within 12 months of the last determination. 16 of the 60 cases, eligibility determinations were not done timely, for example, within 45 days, one of which was a behavioral health case. One of the 60 cases, eligibility effective date was earlier than 3 months prior to the month of application. For CHIP, 40 of 60 cases had timing issues. 28 of 60 cases, eligibility determinations were not done timely. 19 of 60 cases, 4 of which were behavioral health, had not gone through a renewal assessment. Okay. A state's required to ensure applications are reviewed and eligibility determinations are made timely for Medicaid and CHIP recipients. Eligibility is redetermined at least every 12 months when new information is provided from the recipient. Okay. So this is a federal requirement. In a statistically valid sample, 24 of 60 Medicaid cases tested and 40 of 60 cases tested had timing issues. Issues related to renewals not happening within 12 months. All right, so what's the cause? Why is this happening? The auditor is going to speak to that. Staffing and resource shortages adversely impacted application process timelines. Also, the state was prioritizing SNAP eligibility processing over Medicaid and CHIP. So they didn't have enough people, evidently, to do both at the same time. They had to do SNAP before they do Medicaid and CHIP. So, I mean, there's bells and whistles going off because I think the state, the state has a responsibility to do both of those things. I mean, at least we're appropriating money for positions for people to do all of those things and do them simultaneously. Like, that's what the legislature's doing. So I'm going to pause here for just a second and see if we got any questions. Good evening, everyone. So Lisa says, I would say the positions that are funded, but no person's in said job. It is a possibility. It is a possibility. I'll see if I can increase the size here. I know there's probably a way to do it, and this button here makes it bigger. So now you can read it. All right. This criteria here is going to list out your federal law that's telling you why you have to do this, right? Okay, it's interesting. Hold on to that thought for a second. Okay, let's, so there's an effect here. Failure to determine Medicaid and CHIP eligibility timely increases the risk that ineligible beneficiaries receive Medicaid and CHIP benefits. Question costs, known. So the auditor says, hey, there's $608 known, questioned here. There's likely $81 million of question cost. We don't know because we can't audit it. There's 6,000 of known in this other case here, 3.4 million of question costs because we weren't able to audit it. Okay. Again, I am not saying that this is all fraud. What I'm saying is managers could not provide information to the auditors in a timely manner so the auditor can actually audit on behalf of the legislature to know whether the money was spent appropriately or not. So it's a management issue. Recommendation. Department of Health Management should dedicate the resources necessary to determine Medicaid and CHIP eligibility in a timely manner. Okay, let's jump to the next real quick because I want to. Okay, so this is finding number 24066. The last one was 051, I think. This is also a prior year finding. Okay, so again, I want to point out that this isn't something new this year. This is something that they knew that the auditor found last year. Not in 2025. This is all the way back in 2023. Fiscal year 24 is the most recent audit year. Okay, so when I say last year, it means 2023. So an issue that was found in 2023 still is an issue in 2024. Good question. Who would be responsible for getting these corrected? That would be the commissioner and managers of the Department of Health. Who was the commissioner of Department of Health in 2023? And you could even say before that, who was the commissioner of health leading up to that, right? Because this probably is not a problem that just cropped up in 2023. Maybe, I don't know. 60 Medicaid and 60 CHIP recipients were randomly selected for this particular case audit. 24 of 60 had timing issues. 15 of the 60 cases had not gone through a renewal assessment in 12 months as they're required. 16 of the 60 cases were not done in a timely manner within 45 days. One of the 60 cases, eligibility effective date was earlier than 3 months prior. Of CHIP, 28 of 60 cases, eligibility determinations were not done timely. 19 of 60 cases, 4 of which were behavioral health, had not gone through a renewal assessments in the last 12 months. Okay, again, they're required to do the determinations, eligibility determinations, and they're not being done. So what is going on? Again, the argument that the administration is saying for why it couldn't be done is staffing and resource shortages. All right. Same effect, right? So failure to determine this eligibility increases the risk that ineligible beneficiaries receive Medicaid benefits. That question's $81 million, $3.4 million that we don't know. All right. Okay, so there's a whole bunch of them, right? You can scroll through and read them at your leisure, find out what's going on. Ultimately, your administration, your governor, the governor's appointees, who are your commissioners, and the directors of the departments, of the sub-departments, forgetting the words, not sub-departments, I'll come up with in a minute, but the directors, management, they're responsible for implementing change, fixing problems that these things, to fix these, right? All right. Let me show you one more thing. Actually, there's a couple more things I'm going to show you, but I'm sorry. Wrong button. Don't click the stop. That's not what I want. Share something else. All right. Where'd you go here? All right. This is a report found on oig.hhs.gov website. It is U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Office of the Inspector General, and they did an inspection in 2023 of the Alaska Medicaid Fraud Control Unit. Okay, I'll make this bigger so you can see. There's the Deputy Inspector General. Okay, Alaska Medicaid Fraud Control Unit 2023 inspection. Why OIG, Office of Inspector General, did this review. OIG administers the Fraud Control Unit, grant awards, annually recertifies each unit, and oversees the unit's performance in accordance with the requirements of the grant. As part of this oversight, OIG conducts periodic reviews of units and issues public findings of its reports, or public reports of its findings. What did OIG, the Office of Inspector General, find in Alaska? Found inconsistent communication and collaboration across professional disciplines and other ineffective unit practices contributed to significant delays in nearly half of the unit's cases. The unit did not maintain case files in an effective manner due to limitations of its case management system and inconsistent practices for maintaining case information. The unit did not maintain adequate staffing for its administrative functions. The unit took steps to encourage referrals, but could expand these efforts. The unit maintained positive working relationships with its federal partners, but lacked procedures to communicate and coordinate regularly with them. The unit, Alaska, Department of Health, not just Department of Health, but the Alaska Medicaid Fraud Control Unit, did not maintain an accurate, regularly updated equipment inventory. One inventory item was not properly secured. Some aspects of the unit's supervisory review policies were ineffective, and the unit did not consistently follow other aspects of these policies. The unit did not conform with 2 federal grant requirements, and they made recommendations. Okay? And so there's this report. It's many pages, so you can read through it. So I just hit the summary here at the beginning, okay? Because what I want to show you goes to answering the question, where do you cut government? Okay? All right. Let me share with you something else here. Okay, here's some analysis that I did. Let me zoom this in. I'm going to call this Management 101. What I've done is taken the documents that our auditors and our Inspector General have done, the data, the truth that they found, and I just pulled out the salient parts for what a legislator and or a manager at state level, a governor, should concern ourselves with. Okay. A lot of times we'll have a conversation about, whoa, where should we spend money? And the Department of Health comes and says, hey, I need X number of dollars more this year for some reason. Okay. Let me, you'll get a kick out of this. All right. Where are you? And let's see, you are. Oh, there it is right there. This should be it. No. All right. It is a budget document is what I'm looking for. I have egg on my face. I'm going to show you something, and it's here it is. Nope, that's not it either. Okay. This should be it. Yeah, there it is. All right, let me zoom this in for you. This is Medicaid fraud unit. I just wanted to show you in 2023 what happened financially. So the Inspector General comes through and says, hey, we found some problems in the Medicaid fraud control unit. Okay. The actual dollars that were spent, appropriated to that unit in 2021 was $1.26 million. In 2022, there was $2.03 million appropriated. And in the following year, which is this year's budget that we're looking at, $2.047 million. So we're slightly more in this current budget than we were in the previous budget, but we're significantly more than we were the previous year in 2021. Okay. So I'm just showing you that even though there's reason to believe that there's problems in this organization, the legislature just continues to spend money on it. And there's nothing being addressed on either the audit or the OIG report. It's not even part of the conversation for deciding the budget spend. Okay. So now we go to this. Okay. So this is just some real simple analysis that I did. Management 101. We heard in the IG report, their findings was that there was delay, significant delay. Okay. So what happens in an organization, in a bureaucracy, in a company? What happens when you have delay? You have an auditor come in and they say, hey, look, things are taking longer than they need to. Well, the impact to the organization, it has, I mean, it doesn't matter what you're doing. Delay causes things to because it has consequences. Okay. So everything obviously takes longer. Your decision cycles and your processing of paperwork and all of that, because there's delay in the process, it takes longer. You have a reactive management behavior because of the delay. Things are rushed at the end. You have increased error rates from things getting compressed, delay, and then rush. And things get missed. Errors happen. Your culture of your organization kind of normalizes. If you don't fix this problem, it normalizes kind of this low urgency. Like, this is just business as usual. It just takes longer. It shouldn't have to take this long, but it does. And so we just normalize it. What is the cost to the organization? The cost is extended labor, additional overhead. You're inefficient with your capital money. Overtime and overtime increases. You're rushing at the end. You got everything delays, and then it all ends up at bottlenecks and pools up and got to get done when it all arrives all at once, right? And so now you got to stick around for that day because you got to have overtime to get it done because now it needs to get processed. Rework has to be done because there were errors, right? Rework costs money because now you're doing something again. There are things that you could have done, but because you're doing rework or because you're sitting around waiting, you're not getting things done. It's called a opportunity cost, missed opportunities. There's things that you could have done, but you weren't able to. Okay, what about, we heard inconsistent communication and poor collaboration. So if you're an organization that's suffering from this malady, you're going to recognize duplication of effort. Your priorities are not aligned within your department or within your function. Decisions get messed up. They aren't timely. You might think that one decision gets made, and then because it was miscommunicated, the opposite decision actually got made, right? It's inconsistent. It's poor communication. People aren't working together well. An organization has its trust eroded. Your organizational trust in each other, in workers and in management, trust breaks down. And then you have this concept of it's normalizing, and you just have this drift across departments where now departments don't trust other departments. And it's this organization just kind of drifts into chaos isn't the right word, but it just is normalizing poor performance. And that has a cost impact. It affects the budget. Again, you have rework and duplicated labor when you have miscommunication that happens. Extending meeting times, now your meetings take longer because you're poorly communicating. You're not going to innovate. Heck no, you can't innovate because you can't communicate. Innovation requires you to be firing on all cylinders. And you're not going to innovate in that environment. And your people, your good performers, your people who know better, they're going to disappear. They're going to go someplace else. What about ineffective supervision? You're going to have, doesn't matter what department it is, doesn't matter what job, you're going to have inconsistent quality. If you don't have supervision is necessary. In the military, we said, inspect what you expect. That's why we have supervision in multi-layered organizations where there are complex things happening and stuff needs to happen in a timely manner. Doesn't matter what it is. You've got supervisors to make sure that happens in a timely manner. If you've got too many supervisors, then part of that's the problem. There's too many thumbs on it, on a particular process. When you have ineffective supervision, meaning they don't correct the problems, you've got this tolerated underperformance. And it becomes a new normal. And who likes working in an organization where your coworkers they don't work nearly as hard as you do? They don't care. And it doesn't seem to matter that they don't care. It leads to cultural decline within your organization, and your organizational morale deteriorates. This is an ethical time bomb waiting to happen. This is when people make bad decisions about a whole bunch of things, about spending of money, about how you treat people. That's how lawsuits happen. You get less productivity. Your recruiting and onboarding expenses go up. Have we ever heard that before? We need defined benefits. We need a new retirement system because we can't retain or recruit people. We're finding right here that the OIG and our own auditor are telling us that we have a management problem. We've got a supervisory problem. And one of the things that a supervisory problem has is recruiting and retention results. That's the byproduct of having a supervisory or management problem. And it's going to compound over time because you're going to lose institutional knowledge as employees are like, peace out. You don't care, I don't care. I'll go work somewhere else where they care. Like, people don't want to work for organizations that don't care. So these things don't just happen they don't just happen in a silo. Like, they're all interrelated, right? They reinforce each other. They build upon each other. Weak supervision tolerates unclear expectations. Unclear expectations create inconsistent communication. Inconsistent communication causes delay. Delay increases cost and weakens morale. The dysfunction it's just like a big snowball, right? It ends up structurally increasing operating cost. So when I showed you that you've got an organization that's responsible for auditing Medicaid, and they have auditors who've said, hey, look, you got some problems in not being able to audit your... Okay, I don't want to pick on a particular unit. That's maybe not fair, but I don't know whether the Medicaid auditors are suffering or not. Okay, what my point is if this is true and it's being communicated to us by auditors that is true, whatever unit that falls into and where that shoe fits, then whatever dollar figure that's associated with a budget for that unit is an inflated cost. And it's inflated because it's poorly managed. Structurally increases operating cost. So we have, across the board, to some percentage, we have a poorly managed government. If you sit down and talk with the auditor, she will tell you that there are no exceptions across the board. Just pick a department, there's no exceptions. We have a management problem in the state of Alaska, and the byproduct of that structurally, because we're not addressing the management issues, we're increasing the operating cost. So when someone says, where do we cut the budget? You cut it by getting rid of mismanagement. Better management should equal a reduction in operating cost because you're better communicating. You're firing on all cylinders. People want to stay there. You don't have recruiting and retention problems. All of the opposite of the things we just stepped through. So when legislators say, well, we've gone through this and we can't figure out where to cut. Okay? When departments say, we just can't do with any less dollars, right? They're talking about don't give me fewer dollars this year because if I can't keep one of my employees, then it'll just get even worse. It's totally bypassing the problem. The problem is management. The problem is organizational dysfunction that exists because we're poorly managing our government. You have to focus as a legislator. You have to hold the feet to the fire of your employees, of your administrators, of your managers, and explain how are you going to improve your management, and what would it look like in a particular department or a particular division if management issues were addressed. Okay, from a legislator's point of view, how would I know? So I just go to the auditor and I look at the audit and I go to the department or the division of where the auditor audited, and I find some of the issues that the auditor found, and I then question the administration, and I say, did you fix these audit findings? Some of them are carryover from year after year. Some of them they do fix. The point that I'm getting to is there's an audit there. There are paper trails for mismanagement or room for improvement. If no one likes having a finger stuck in their eye of you're doing things wrong, but there's always room for improvement. So if you look at it constructively and say, okay, well, you're coming here asking for additional money this year, and you haven't fixed the problems that were addressed in this audit. It's that right there is telling me that there's a flag, there's a red light blaring. Explain to me why you need more money if the problem is a management problem. If you fix the management problem and you better manage your area, then you have to deal, your budget is better, right? You don't have as much pressure on the budget because you don't have as much rework and things run smoother and it costs less. I shouldn't have to, as a commentator, I shouldn't have to prove this to anyone. This is management 101. So what we need is to address these things: communication and collaboration within departments, between departments, managers to subordinates. That piece of the puzzle has to be addressed. It has to be improved. Whatever's causing delay has to be improved. And as a legislator, I can't tell you what that is. Other than what's written in the audit, I don't know what's going on in each one of the departments. I don't work there. I don't spend any time there. And if I went and visited Department of Corrections, or I visited Department of Transportation or whatever, I mean, first of all, in order for me to visit, I'm going to have to let somebody know I'm coming, and the best foot's going to be forward. And you're never going to see what the problems actually are. The people who know what the problems are the employees and the managers. So it really is incumbent upon the governor and his appointees, the commissioners, to do a deep dive into their departments. And if that is not happening, the evidence will be audit reports year after year are not getting addressed. So who really should have the screws turned to them is the governor and the commissioners, because they're the ones that are ultimately responsible to the people. Why in the world do you have audit findings that are years old that you haven't addressed? Forget the fact that you could just say, hey, look, here's a list of audit findings and you need to go fix them. Forget that for a second. That's focusing on the wrong thing. The fact that you haven't addressed them is the management problem. It shouldn't be up to the legislator to come in and say, hey, we need you to fix this. Like you already know that you should fix it. Otherwise, you don't need to be there. So don't let legislators and don't let administrators and governor candidates tell you that that we can't cut the budget. It's a red herring. It's a red herring. It's not the problem. Let's say it's not the solution long term. The problem is the mismanagement piece. Fix that, and the budget then fixes itself. Then you have conversations about your recruiting and retention is approved. Okay. Now we don't have additional cost that goes with recruiting and retention. So that's money that we didn't have to spend this year. So what happens when you better manage? You end up with money at the end of the year that's lapsing back into the general fund. The reason we've got a supplemental budget is because, drum roll, much of what we're doing in state government is mismanagement. And I want to pause here and say it's not intentional, but the fact that we're not fixing it is intentional. You have to be intentional if you're going to fix it. So that's in a nutshell. Outside of the legislature just taking an axe and the governor taking an axe to the budget and saying, "Hey, we're just not going to give the Medicaid audit team. We're just not going to give you $100,000 that you had last year. We're just going to reduce your budget by 10%." Outside of doing that, which does nothing for management. It improves nothing. It just means you spend less money. And the problems that exist, they keep right on happening. There's no short-term answer. I mean, this isn't a quick win. It isn't an easy fix, right? It takes effort across the board amongst all of our departments to do better management. But the result of doing better management means that it costs government less. And so when the legislature is focused on improving things, that's what they should be focused on improving. What do we do to improve the management of our government? And then you've got a less costly government over time. Union contracts. The legislature must approve collective bargaining contracts for employees. Those contracts are never discussed on the floor. They're never discussed in committee. Never discussed. When they come up, they're tacked into the budget, and the approval of the budget is an approval of the contract. You want to talk about management responsibility with regard to contracts? That's the legislature. You're the final stop here. You're the ones that are going to appropriate the money for those contracts. If the legislature looked at the contract and said, "Hey, you know what? This is a tight budget year. We don't have lots of money, and we're not going to agree to these additional spending requests within the collective bargaining agreement until we have improvements over here in this management. Look at all these audits findings that haven't been fixed. Union, we need help improving management and holding people's feet to the fires of getting these things fixed. We need better management." It has to be a collective effort. Your administrators, your appointed officials, your commissioner, they have ultimate responsibility, but the unions have some responsibility in this as well. Again, this whole cooperation, what did we say? What did we say earlier here? Collaboration, poor collaboration. Well, I bet you there's poor collaboration between the unions and management. I just bet you. I don't even have to say that. You know there is. You know it's a hostile or adversarial relationship. Well, that just causes things to get more expensive. All right. I'm off my soapbox. Organizations depend on clarity, speed, and accountability. When you have a problem with these particular issues that our auditors are telling you about, and they are happening simultaneously, you are degrading that unit, that organization's ability to be efficient with its money. And if that is happening all across the government, then there is a large dollar figure associated with that mismanagement. That needs to be fixed. So you've got an election coming up. You've got time to go hit the single audit and read through it and ask questions of your legislator. What does this mean? I bet you most legislators have not read the single audit. I bet you they have not. At a bare minimum, the committees that they're assigned to Like if you're on a committee that's responsible for health and family services or Department of Law, or if you're responsible for, you see what I'm saying? If those are your committee assignments, at least those portions of the audits you should care about. And these audits are not the only audits that are out there. You've got sunset audits for boards and commissions that are done periodically when the board is getting ready to sunset. Do we review those audits? Because those are going to highlight where we have management issues as well. Did you know that the state auditor used to do not just a financial audit, but they used to do a performance audit as well? They published performance audit reports. Those are no longer done. They went by the wayside. They're no longer required. Ask me if the legislature ever took up the performance reports during the legislative session to figure out what needed to be improved. They didn't. It got ignored. That's why they're no longer being done, because they were ineffective. It didn't help. It didn't. It wasn't taken up by the legislature, so it was wasted time and effort. Ultimately, you, the voter, we, the people, have to demand that the expectation is that the people we send to represent us in our representative government, that's our elected representatives, and the people that are hired to manage our government, we must demand that they're improving the management of our government. You'll know that the improvement is happening when your auditor stops finding so many things that are wrong, and so many things that were wrong last year that did get fixed this year. I mean, anyway, let me check some comments here. Corey says, so our government is condoning incompetence, reporting and funding more. Well, yeah, condoning is not necessarily the word I would choose. It's kind of like, I guess if you're guilty by association, then yeah, it could be condoning. If you're not fixing the problem, you're part of the problem, then it's kind of condoning. But that's really what it is. I mean, no one's campaigning on we need to have the poorest run government. We need no one's pushing that narrative. So it's not like we're working towards, this is our goals to have the most dysfunctional government in the nation. We just aren't fixing it. We're not doing the hard thing that's fixing it. Lynn says in government entities, the union protects the non-performers. Yeah, I mean, to a certain extent, you're right. I think that their numbers, they don't want to lose their numbers. And so it becomes a jobs program, and we keep people on even though maybe they should go somewhere else. And I yeah. Well, it got bumped here. Corey, if you owned a company and paid someone to run this portion of the company and they can't provide reports, you can find someone who can. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to be in the private sector and look at government and say, they'll never be tolerated in the private sector. But it's not the private sector, it's the government sector. So it's, well, I would argue it doesn't need to be different. It is. But you're right. You're absolutely right. Lynn, again, in a government entity, if you want to deal with a non-performer, you have to file a complaint and get their shop steward involved in an investigation. You have to ensure that you have documented your grievances. It's much easier if they did something blatant. Poor performance is different. Complaints and union investigations take time. Lots of managers likely know the person, and the system just perpetuates itself, right? Delay. then nothing ever happens and somebody walks off and leaves because there's poor performers, and who wants to work with poor performers? And it's a vicious cycle. Dunleavy attempted the budget slashing, and it led to him almost being removed from office. What could he have done different, or as a follow-up that could have made the cuts happen? Well, I would just argue that he and his commissioners could have put a more concerted effort over the last 8 years in improving government, improving the management of government. Maybe they did. Maybe they did put some effort, but the audits that are being done by the state auditor and by other auditors, like I showed you, the federal IG inspector, those are telling us a much different story. In some cases, the administration may need to be making choices, making decisions that cost money. I know that, and I'm not sure where we stand right now, but there is a computer system that exists within the Department of Health, I believe, that is an interface with the federal government computer system. And it is which language is it? It's not C. It's, I want to say COBOL, but maybe not. Anyway, it's a programming language that is nearly obsolete. And we're maintaining this mainframe computer because there's a requirement to interact with this federal computer system. And moving away from the mainframe computer would be costly. So we pay, I don't remember what it was. It seems to remind me that it was like $1 million a year, every couple of years, for programmers to come in and program the changes necessary and maintain this computer system. So we've gone away from mainframe computers for most things. We've gone to the cloud computing, and it's not necessary. It is a waste of money, but yet we're continuing to maintain it. Now, this is a couple of years ago. Well, I haven't been in the legislature for a couple of years, so maybe they fixed it already, but I kind of doubt it. But that's an example, I would say, of having to spend one-time money in order to improve or reduce the systemic or operational cost over time. And sometimes that's a challenge to get it through the legislature, because that's operational cost plus one-time money. It's increasing spending, right? But if you're increasing spending in order to fix something that's going to decrease spending next year, then that should be a appropriate use of your money if it decreases spending over time. And Lynn, this is probably the biggest issue. I agree with you. You don't want to make waves, especially this year, right? 2026. Why would I want to make waves this year when in August and November, people are going to be making decisions about what my job's going to be from an elected leader's perspective? I don't want to make waves because I might get unelected. From a manager's perspective or from an employee's perspective, if I make waves and someone doesn't like what I'm saying, then maybe I have a negative performance review. And too many negative performance reviews means I don't get a raise. Or if I want to have a lateral transfer, people won't transfer me, or I get fired. So this is why, in my opinion, the buck stops with the governor and the commissioners, because they're the ones that have the authority to reach down into the organization and say, no, this is what we're going to do. We're going to, rub some heads together, give the, hey, quit being stupid. We got to be smarter about this. Got to be better managers, better stewards of the resource. We got to improve these situations that we have that are costing us money because of poor management. Again, it isn't Ben's opinion. I've shown you two documents from two different entities. One's a federal IG and the other's our state auditor that's pointing out that we've got management problems. It's not my opinion. This is fact. Somebody needs to give them a whole noogie on the head and say, hey, look, if you can't straighten this up, then we got to find somebody that can, because continuing to be inefficient and mismanage is not acceptable. It's not acceptable to the taxpayers, of which you aren't one, but the taxpayers of the oil companies, they don't want to have their money wasted. You're giving up your dividend. So why am I giving up my dividend for a mismanaged government? That doesn't make sense. Do I care? I guess maybe some mollassins don't care. Like, you know what? I don't care. As long as it doesn't come out of my pocket, it can be mismanaged all at once. I don't care. I mean, I think it's a pretty short-sighted attitude, but I don't know. Maybe that's what people just don't want to rock the boat. Unions create pandemonium when they see their employees' jobs being threatened. Yeah, I mean, when an organization that has high collective bargaining sees like management brings in some Lean Six Sigma or some process improvement folks that are going to make things more efficient, maybe they'll bring in some computers or bring in some robots and people are going to lose their jobs, then unions don't like that because somebody's going to lose their job. I mean, if you're a good worker, you're gonna land on your feet. There's somewhere else out there that you can be employed. This nonsense that I have to have this particular job. Not if it doesn't make sense. Not if it's wasteful. You don't. There's not an obligation, from the taxpayer's perspective, that government be inefficient because being efficient would put people out of work. Like. That's not an excuse to be inefficient. Christopher says this state has funded jobs that there's not an employee in that position at all. Yeah, preaching to the choir here. That money gets spent. Much of this mismanagement is empowered or enabled because there is this slush fund to kind of grease the skids and make things work. Like, inefficiency requires more money. That's why we have vacant positions, so that we've got more money that's used because we're inefficient. And the inefficiency isn't in my department, it's in that other department over there. They're the ones that are all messed up, and they're causing delay that affects my department. And so I need this slush fund because I can't fix their department. That Yahoo over there can't manage anything. And right. I mean, ultimately it is the governor and the commissioners that are responsible for fixing this management issue. Corey, you got some statistics here. As of December last year, there were 16,000 total job openings across all sectors in Alaska. A hiring freeze was implemented in May of 2025. I'm unaware. Ben, you need to move your live feed to the top right of the page so you're not covered up by the chat. Well, on my window, I'm not covered up by the chat. How about I do this, and then all you see is my face? Might be on your phone. If you're watching on the phone, it doesn't come out right. That could be. Chris, let me know what platform you're on. Performance review. A lot of jobs in government increase based on your longevity. Performance doesn't play. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Your pay scale is proof of this, right? When union members say, hey, we don't get raises, beg to differ. Like, this whole pay scale that we have gives you time and service pay increases, steps. over time. So longevity, you're rewarded for your longevity, regardless of whether you can do your job or not. Like, yeah, municipal of Anchorage, I assume what MOA means, government job. I'm not sure about the state of Alaska wage increases. Yeah, my understanding is that the jobs in Alaska that have a pay scale where there's a scale over time, then the longer you're in the job, you move up in step and you get more pay. So yes, it's the incentive to stick with the job, and you'll be rewarded for your experience, right? Not necessarily your performance, which is what many in the private sector, you think you're going to get a raise just because you've been there. Maybe some employers do that. Many employers are like, you know what? If I'm going to give you a raise, I need better performance from you. Like, there's an expectation that you know how to do your job. I'm not going to pay you to not do your job. Oh, Chris says, so you're sitting there on the couch watching me on a 65-inch Samsung TV. Interesting. I'll take a look at what you're saying afterwards and look into it. Anyway. So when somebody says we can't cut the government, we can't cut the budget, you can tell them that you can cut the budget, you just don't want to. And cutting the budget is not really the point. The point is better managing our government to do the things we want it to do in a way that costs us less money. Fix the management problems and you reduce the cost of government. And it won't make much difference if it's just one area in one department. But if every area in every department is focusing on being better managed, then over time you will see a reduction in the cost of. And I know people are going to call me a Pollyanna. Ben, you're altruistic and being unreasonable, and this is never going to happen because it's government, and government is always inefficient. Well, there's a part of that I believe, but I don't think that it has to be that way. I think you hire the right people, and it doesn't have to be that way. I think they're finding that out in Florida. I think they're finding it out in places like Utah where they do better management. They have better principles, evidently. better management principles. Maybe the rules need to be followed. The Executive Budget Act needs to be followed. Maybe we just need people that can actually manage, and then we would see better management. Corey, yes, I believe so. Well, undoubtedly, our vote is an action you can take. I think that if more Alaskans were reading the audit and then they were bringing these up and asking the questions about this particular audit to their legislator or to the administration, I don't know, write the commissioner and say, hey, this is really important to me. What are we doing to fix this audit? Enough people writing the commissioner about a particular audit finding, and then maybe the commissioner will take it seriously and do something about it. Your legislator at a bare minimum should know about the single audit or any of the audits. I'm telling you that it's not part of the daily or session wise activity that's going on. Like, there isn't a connection between the audit and the budget. You would think that it would make sense that before you come asking for more money or come asking for money, period, that we have a conversation about you fixing the problems that the audit found in your organization, right? That is not happening. It's not happening. You find it happen once on camera in committee, and there'll be 100 other, how many ever findings in the in the years of audits that it doesn't happen, right? So when I say it never happens, I'm pretty sure it never happens. Maybe once, maybe twice, but there's no structural connection. There's no structural connection. And I say structural, I mean, when the budget comes before the House Finance Committee or the Senate Finance Committee, there's not a connection for legislative finance to say, okay, here is requests for Department of Law, 1, 2, 3 through 10, whatever, how many ever requests they've got. Here's how they're spending their money. Here are the audit findings for the Department of Law. And so the question ought to be, are we addressing these audit findings kind of as a precursor, a prerequisite for getting funding the next year, right? What is it going to take? I mean, maybe it's the opportunity for the administration to say, hey, look, we've got these audit findings and we actually need some one-time money in order to fix this audit finding, to get better, to manage ourselves better. We actually need some dollar figures for this. I mean, the Executive Budget Act says that each one of the departments should be, the legislature should be telling the departments how to measure themselves, and they should be measuring themselves with something that says, hey, this is how we're spending the money, and you can measure it this way, that we're being efficient with the money. But that's not part of the conversation in the budget either. So it's broken. We're just not, Alaskans are not requiring their government to be managed well. And largely, I think it's because Alaskan voters don't know. They don't know how to manage government. They don't know what the law says. They don't know what the expectations are. I mean, in their mind, they might think, it's logical. Government should be managed efficiently, just like every business should. Yeah. Is there inefficiency? Yeah. But I just kind of pass on it because it's hard and I don't really know how to communicate it, and somebody else will deal with it. I don't know. It's kind of an apathy, right? Well, if you read nothing else, go read the audit. And then when you have a town hall, you can ask your legislator about the audit findings. Hey, what are we doing about this? It says here that Medicaid's got $81 million that they don't know. They didn't audit. They don't know whether it was mismanaged or spent wisely or what. And I forgot to show you, but there's another location there that says, with regard to previous year's findings with Medicaid in specific, the administration doesn't agree in the finding, the dollar figure in the finding, because the federal government has communicated that previous year's expenses are not going to be recouped. They're not going to come after them. So yes, there was somebody that got overpaid last year or some previous year. Yes, we know that, but we're not going to come and recoup for that expense. That's the federal government saying that. At least that's what the state government is saying, the federal government is saying. So in other words, the tax dollars were spent, they were spent incorrectly, and we're not going to do anything about it. That's federal government saying we're not going to do anything about it. So the state government's like, why should we care? If the federal government's not going to want their money back, then why do we care? Anyway. All right, we're an hour and 20. Not that I'm counting. Any other questions tonight? I think I've caught up with all the chats. You guys are watching what's happening in Iran. I'm not going to say much about that tonight, other than I am glad that we are finally addressing the Iranian problem. I don't know that the solution that comes after this conflict is any better. It's largely going to be up to the Iranians, because I don't think Trump is going to go in and try to rebuild Iran to look like America or something else. I think he's going to turn it over to them and say, fix it. So what comes out afterwards? But for way too many years, and this is the thing that people are saying, oh, we started the war and this was uncalled for. And what people are forgetting is that Iran has been finding every opportunity to export its violence, but it's not doing it in the name of Iran. It's doing it in the name of Hamas or some other militant group. And I lost too many friends in Iraq due to roadside bombs that were Iranian EFPs, explosively formed penetrators, right? That just were top of the line bombs, top of the line technology. Clearly Iranian sponsored weapons. They made what happened in Iraq worse. Any opportunity to go kill Americans, that's their Americans, Israelis, whatever. Can the world look like a safer place for a while with the current regime gone and a friendlier Iran nation? Yeah, it would. Do those people that are now dead, the Ayatollah and his henchmen, do they get a pass for all the violence that they've caused against us and Israel throughout the years? Yeah, they did. Till now. Now there's accountability. I know that it's easy to focus on Iran because that's where our troops are, but this really isn't about Iran as much as it is China. And we have to understand that Trump is playing a much longer game than most people are thinking about. And with Venezuela and Iran under different management, it puts China in a much more precarious situation with regard to energy. I don't know whatever happens in Iran, because China gets a lot of oil from Iran. Does a new regime, are they friendlier to the United States and less friendly to China? I don't know. We'll see. But China's got to be thinking, what's going on here? Like, we're running out of places to find energy, buy energy from that are friendly to us and not being taken over by the United States or some kind of recalibration on the world stage that is more friendly to the United States, right? I mean, it's serious. And I would think that the one person in the world who's actually watching what's happening in Iran at this point, after Venezuela, you know who it is? It's Kim Jong-un in North Korea. Like, once this thing is done in Iran, if the carrier battle groups go park themselves off the Korean peninsula, I would think that Kim Jong-un would be thinking, what's going on? Am I next? I would think that his military henchmen would be asking the same question. Are we going to be next? Maybe just moving the fleet over there and saying, hey, look, we need to negotiate. means now there's a little bit greater incentive. I mean, you're going to see Russia help North Korea. Come on, Russia can barely handle themselves right now. Speaking of Koreas and Russia, did you see that South Korea? You know what? I didn't double check this. I saw this on social media. It was a news article, so I assumed that it was true, but maybe it wasn't. Anybody else confirm this? South Korea has sent a commitment to the conflict that's going on with Russia, and I wanted to say Czechoslovakia. It's not Czechoslovakia. Ukraine. Not Yugoslavia either. With Ukraine, that Korean artillery units, Korean tanks, Korean military equipment is now going to be present. It's moving to Ukraine through NATO, which would be a significant improvement for Ukraine. South Korea's got a pretty modern army. backed up by the United States and our technology for a long time. So that would be a I think a game changer in Ukraine. Anybody else read that, or am I blathering on about something that's not true? I hope the regime is gone. Speaking of Iran, but air attacks won't do it. They need the people to overthrow their government. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. The whether it's our boots on ground or whether it's Iranian boots on ground, somebody's going to have to pony up the manpower to make it happen. Now, I think that as long as we have intelligence that tells us where the Revolutionary Guard, the IRGC or whatever it is, Iranian Revolutionary Guard, and the leaders, the communist leaders, Islamic leaders, I guess you should say. As long as we have good intelligence that tells us where they are and we can bring our munitions to bear, our power to bear, then that's maybe the best case that we can do at this point without putting boots on ground. And ultimately, our boots is not going to matter. It needs to be the Iranian people that step up and take ownership of their country. And to the extent that we can help empower them, then that's probably in our best interest long term. Anyway, I do think that the conflict is demonstrating what the future holds with regard to the use of force. Clausewitz said that that war is just the continuation of politics by other means. And now we're seeing that politics can be the political environment through war can be addressed through remote and impersonal attacks on heads of state and the power of the government through missiles and rockets, and now Israel's got directed energy weapons that are shooting lasers that are knocking rockets out of the sky, right? So that's the future is this technological leaps that allow us to do battle from distance, from sitting behind a computer screen. We're no longer out on the battlefield marching against each other, with muskets. We're sitting behind computers, flying remote drones and rockets into each other, right? I think that impersonal nature of war might make it more likely that we have war in the future. Who knows? Anyway, I pray for the safety of our men and women who are serving and their families. It's not an easy thing to go through, especially for the family. The people, the service members are overdoing their job, so it may be hard work, but they're doing it because that's what they volunteered to do. Family back home, they've got the hardest job of not knowing what's going on and just having to have faith that everything's going to work out. Their loved ones are going to come home. So anyway, yep, going to be an interesting world. I have to say that if Trump is successful in a regime change that's friendlier to the West, what a world 2026 and into the future is going to be. I mean, he's really making some major moves that are going to have long-lasting impacts on our world. Okay, Christopher, you said I heard North Korea has troops in Ukraine. Russia brought over. Yeah, that didn't work out so good for Russia or North Korean troops. I understand. That's not what I'm referring to. I am referring to South Korean troops South Korean equipment going to Ukraine. I'm going to do a quick search and see if I know what I'm talking about here. It doesn't look like it. It looks all of the news articles that I'm seeing shows that it's not happening. So maybe what I saw on social media was fake news, which that doesn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise you either, does it? Yeah, I must have been a subject of fake news, because I don't see any news here that's saying that they're actually sending aid to Ukraine. All right, well, that's one less thing I have to worry about. Cool beans. Okay. Well, I hope you all have a good Monday. We'll see you tomorrow night. Again, drop me a line on producer@oversightlive.com if you got questions by email, and I'll do my best to answer them. You guys have a wonderful evening, and we'll catch you again tomorrow night.